All right, buckle up, because this is one of those moments where you look at the screen, you rub your eyes, and you say, really? Really? This is where we are right now? Let me start with this. Delusional Donald. Yes, that delusional Donald went on camera, puffed out his chest, slurred his way through another rambling declaration, and announced that the United States has captured a sitting foreign president and, quote, will run his country. Run it. Like it's a bankrupt casino in Atlantic City, like it's Trump University, like it's one of his many failed companies that ended in lawsuits, fraud judgments, and people getting ripped off. And that, folks, is not a movie plot. That's not some dystopian Netflix series. That's Donald Trump in real life, standing behind a podium, telling the world he just kidnapped a head of state and plans to occupy a sovereign nation. You want to know what's radical? That barely anyone in the MAGA media ecosystem even blinked. Here's the headline. According to Reuters, early Saturday morning, January 4th, Donald Trump announced that U.S. forces conducted a direct military strike in Venezuela and captured Nicolás Maduro and his wife in Caracas. Reuters. Not some blog, not a rumor. Reuters. Play that clip in your head for a second. Low-flying aircraft, explosions in a capital city, a head of state dragged out and flown to U.S. custody. And Trump smiling like he just won a game show prize. And Trump didn't stop there. Oh no. He told reporters the U.S. would be running Venezuela until there can be a safe and proper transition. Safe, proper, judicious. This coming from the guy who couldn't even manage a peaceful transfer of power in his own country without inciting a violent insurrection that left police officers injured and democracy hanging by a thread. Really? This guy's going to teach another country about democracy? It gets worse. According to the Department of Justice, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that Maduro has been indicted in the Southern District of New York. That's the same district that handles international drug trafficking cases, organized crime, terrorism cases. Bondi said Maduro will face American justice on American soil. Let that sink in. The Trump regime is treating a foreign president not as a diplomatic actor, not as a political opponent, but as a criminal defendant, after using military force to seize him. And here's where it gets truly dangerous. According to CBC News and multiple international outlets, this is the most direct U.S. military intervention in Latin America since 1989. 35 years. Operation Just Cause, Panama. Manuel Noriega. And we all know how that ended. Civilian deaths, international condemnation, decades of legal and moral debate. And who's back at the center of it all? The same guy who praises dictators, the same guy who says he wants to terminate the Constitution, the same guy who says immigrants are poisoning the blood of the country, the so-called strongman Trump. Now let's talk about what this really is, because this isn't about freedom, it's not about democracy, and it sure as hell isn't about helping Venezuelans. This is about power, ego, oil, and authoritarian impulse. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves on Earth. According to OPEC data, more than 300 billion barrels, 300 billion. And suddenly Trump, who spent years attacking renewable energy, cozying up to fossil fuel executives, and gutting environmental protections, decides he cares deeply about Venezuelan democracy? You know who it's been a great year for? Billionaires, oil executives, defense contractors. According to Open Secrets, defense industry lobbying hit record highs during Trump's last term. Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, all of them made billions off instability and war. And now Trump wants to export that chaos abroad. Here's the part MAGA doesn't want you to hear. Under international law, and yes, facts still matter, this is illegal. Flat out, illegal. The United Nations Charter, Article 2.4, explicitly prohibits the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. There are two exceptions: self-defense under Article 51 or authorization from the UN Security Council. According to the Associated Press and Reuters, Venezuela did not attack the United States. There was no imminent threat, and there was no UN Security Council resolution authorizing force. None. By the same legal standards the U.S. uses to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine, this action fails. Completely. So when MAGA extremists start screaming about international law when it suits them, remember this moment. Remember the hypocrisy. Remember the selective outrage. Now, here's where Canada comes in, and this is fascinating. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney released a statement hours after the strike, and you could almost hear the tension between every word. He acknowledged that Canada does not recognize Maduro as a legitimate leader. Canada hasn't recognized him since the disputed 2018 election. That's true. But Carney also emphasized something Trump and MAGA couldn't care less about: international law, multilateralism, a peaceful, negotiated transition led by Venezuelans. Carney did not congratulate Trump. He did not endorse the strike. He did not celebrate the capture. He threaded the needle. And that tells you everything. Canada is watching its closest ally normalize unilateral military regime change, live, on camera, and trying not to get pulled into the abyss. Here's the quote, according to CBC News. Carney said Canada supports a peaceful, negotiated Venezuelan transition process that respects the democratic will of the Venezuelan people and calls on all parties to respect international law. Respect international law. That is diplomatic code for, we're deeply uncomfortable with what you just did. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand echoed the same message. Rule of law. International norms. Again and again. Why does this matter? Because once you normalize this behavior, once you say a powerful country can just decide another leader is illegitimate and send in the military, you've destroyed the rules-based order. Who's next? Who decides? Russia already uses this logic. China would love to. Imagine Beijing saying, we've decided Taiwan's leadership is illegitimate. We're just restoring order. Imagine Moscow saying, Ukraine's government is illegitimate. Precedent's been set. You don't get to complain when the boomerang comes back. And let's talk about the human cost because MAGA loves to erase that part. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, more than 7 million Venezuelans have fled their country since 2015. 7 million, one of the largest refugee crises in the Western Hemisphere. Canada has taken in tens of thousands of Venezuelan refugees, families, children, people who fled violence and economic collapse. Now imagine you're one of them, sitting in Toronto or Vancouver, watching footage of explosions in Caracas, trying to reach family members while communications are down. That's happening right now. Global Affairs Canada confirmed there were no immediate reports of Canadians injured. But here's the kicker. Canada doesn't even have an embassy in Venezuela anymore. It's been closed since 2019. Canadians are being told to contact the embassy in Bogota, Colombia. Bogota, not Caracas. That's how disconnected and dangerous this situation is. And the experts are sounding the alarm. According to CBC, Roxana Vigil from the Council on Foreign Relations warned that rebuilding Venezuela's oil sector alone could take years, not months. Years. It requires stability, infrastructure, expertise, not chaos, not occupation. Former Canadian ambassador to Venezuela Ben Roswell said something chilling. He said, "This is the end of one dictator, but not the beginning of democracy." Read that again. Ending a dictator does not automatically produce freedom. History proves that over and over. Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, Grenada, Panama. And Trump thinks he's the guy who's going to get it right? Really? Now let's talk about politics at home, because this is exposing fractures everywhere. Canada's conservative leader rushed to congratulate Trump, calling Maduro a narco-socialist dictator and praising the arrest. No nuance, no concern for law, just ideological chest thumping. Meanwhile, Canada's NDP leader called the strike illegal and demanded condemnation. The Green Party called it a kidnapping and a violation of international law. Bloc leaders warned about civilian lives and sovereignty. So even among U.S. allies, this move is blowing up alliances. And that's the point. Authoritarians don't build coalitions. They demand loyalty. Trump doesn't want allies. He wants vassals. And let's not ignore the domestic implications here in the United States. This is the same Trump who talks about mass deportations, 100 million people, according to his own allies. The same Trump who wants to deploy the military domestically. The same Trump who calls journalists enemies of the people. You think this ends overseas? You think a guy who normalizes military force abroad won't use it at home? History says otherwise. According to the Brennan Center, Trump previously asked advisors about using the military against protesters. According to former Defense Secretary Mark Esper, Trump asked if soldiers could just shoot demonstrators. This is who we're dealing with. And yet MAGA extremists clap. They cheer. They call it strength. You want to know what strength actually looks like? Upholding the law even when it's inconvenient, protecting civilians, building institutions, respecting sovereignty, not kidnapping leaders, and announcing occupations on camera. Now here's the economic angle nobody's talking about enough. Global oil markets are already reacting. According to Bloomberg, even the possibility of Venezuelan production coming back online affects prices. And when prices fluctuate, working people pay. At the pump, on heating bills, on food prices. Who doesn't feel it? Billionaires, oil executives, hedge funds, and Trump knows that. He's betting on chaos enriching his donors. This is disaster capitalism, live and unfiltered. And here's the chilling part. Once international law becomes optional, once rules only apply to enemies and not allies, the system collapses. That's not me saying it. That's decades of legal scholarship. That's the foundation of the post-World War II order. And Trump is lighting a match. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with a choice. Do we accept a world where a single man, a man facing multiple criminal trials, a man found liable for fraud, a man who tried to overturn an election, gets to decide which governments live and die? Or do we push back? Do we demand accountability, transparency, law? Because this isn't just about Venezuela. It's about what kind of world we're leaving to the next generation. And if you're thinking, this feels dangerous, you're right. If you're thinking, this feels authoritarian, you're right. And if you're thinking, why isn't this being covered wall to wall? Ask yourself who benefits from silence. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit subscribe for real-time updates like this. And if you want unfiltered, fact-based coverage that doesn't bow to MAGA intimidation or billionaire interests, make sure you're subscribed. This story is just getting started, and the stakes could not be higher.